Welcome back, guys. Today I'll be introducing complex numbers. So I'll be talking about the real and the imaginary part. A complex number consists of a real and an imaginary part. What do I mean by real and imaginary part? The general form that we have a complex number in is a plus. Now, some persons use BJ, where A is the real part and B is the imaginary part because of the letter J, or some persons have A plus BI, where A is the real and BI is the imaginary. So we use I and J interchangeably, and both of them means it's the imaginary part. Now, I and J is the same thing as square root of negative 1. So, I is square root of negative 1, J is square root of negative 1. So, if I have I square or J square, so if I square any one of them, given that it's the imaginary part, then this means that I square or J square is negative 1. How is it that it's negative 1? Why? You ever think of it? Why is I square or J square negative 1? Well, let's look at it. If I say that I square is I times I, where I represents the square root of negative 1, so I'm multiplying the square root of negative 1 twice, because I times I will be I square. So that means root negative 1 times root negative 1 is root negative 1 all square. And then the square root cancels the square, so that is how we arrive at I square being negative 1. Now, let's look at a square root of negative 4. We can rewrite this as an imaginary part where we split negative 4 as negative 1 times 4. Then we can split this as root negative 1 times root 4. And then square root of 4 is 2, and this now is an imaginary number. Let's use J, and square root of 4 is 2. So we can have this as J2 or 2J. It's the same thing, whichever we are comfortable with. Just remember, J and I is considered to be in the imaginary part. And it represents square root of negative 1, but we're going to leave it as 2J or J2. Now, let's look at another example. I have a complex number. So this is a complex number that I'm writing. So what I have here is 7 minus root negative 16. 7 is a real. I'm not seeing the imaginary, but we will see it eventually by breaking this apart. So we leave the 7 as is. This is the real part. So the only thing that I need to disintegrate is negative 16. So negative 16 is the same thing as negative 1 times 16. Then I'm going to split the square root. So I'll have root negative 1 times root 16. Now we're going to have 7 minus, now root negative 1. I am going to have G. You could have I. It's the same imaginary number. And the square root of 16 is 4. So this is 7 minus J4 or 7 minus 4G. And that is my real and imaginary part. The next example We're going to rewrite this so we're seeing the imaginary part. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is rewrite this as square root of -1 times 50. Next, I'm going to split this into two parts. So I have square root of -1, which we know represents j, or if you want to use I, times square root of 50. Now, we're going to replace square root of -1 with, let's use I. But the square root of 50, I can break it down further, where 50 can be rewritten as 2 times 25. And I chose 25 because 25 is a perfect square, where the square root of 25 is 5. So what is next is to split the number. So I have it as root 2 times root 25. Now, having this, I have I times the square root of 25 is 5. So it means I can rewrite this as 5 root 2. So that means the square root of -50 is I 5 root 2. Or we could have it as 5 root 2 I. And that's it. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. If you have questions, just leave a comment below. Have a great day.